Welcome to SoulBlazing with Lisa Haisha. Today's guest is the subject of the #1 wellness documentary, May I Be Frank. He's an author, he's a motivational speaker, and he does workshops all over the world. Frank Ferrante. Hi, Frank.
Hi, Elisa.
It's so wonderful to have you here on the show.
It's so nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so I discovered you online. I was Googling spiritual things and inspirational people, and there you were, and I stumbled on your documentary, May I Be Frank, and it blew me away. I watched it, and I was just riveted, texted friends, posted about it, then I watched it again, and I watched it again, and again, and again.
Thank you.
And I needed to meet you, because your journey is extraordinary, and it's a universal story. You know, everyone suffers from depression. We all go through stages where we're overweight, or we don't love ourselves, or we don't treat ourselves with kindness. And what your documentary did, it really spoke to my soul, because you were so authentic and real. I mean, you got a colonic on camera. I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing. So tell me about your journey, because you did the opposite of Supersize Me. You did wheatgrass, greens, salads for 42 days?
Right.
Something like that, and then you kept it up. Most people gain it right back.
Right.
So please share your story.
Well,
with us.
I mean, again, the food is only one component, and the journey continues. People see a movie and they see an arc, and they like to think that, you know, Americans, one of the reasons foreign movies don't make it here is because everybody wants something in a bento box, right?
Right.
You know, the good guys always get caught, the good guys always get the girl, bad guys always get caught, etc. You know, that wasn't my experience. The journey's continuing. It's not over. And what happened was I stumbled. I was given the gift of desperation, as they say. I was over at my worst. I was at 325 pounds, depressed, pre-diabetic, and really lost. Didn't know what to do. I had been clean and sober for 17 years. So I really couldn't understand. I thought that that alone would have afforded me a higher consciousness, and it didn't. There was more work to be done, and so I look at addiction like as a tree. You have these different branches. You have booze and coke and drugs, and then you have sex, you have shopping, you have gambling, but the root goes down to the same place. These are just manifestations of early wounding that was never addressed. And so I was at that point. And in the recovery world, they refer to the gift of desperation. And I was at that point. And these people showed up in my life that were from Cafe Gratitude, that were interested in doing a film that was the opposite of Supersize Me. And they had been waiting for somebody to be the subject of this. And you know, I was, but if you ever notice the clientele in a raw food vegan restaurant, they're kind of, you know, like skinny white guys with dreadlocks and wearing tunics and smell like patchouli. And I walk into this thing, and you know, like they looked at me, that's our guy, right? And I was rather skeptical and about all these practices, about, you know, veganism and colonics and holistic health practitioners and that whole thing. I was really skeptical about it, but that's what gives the film its humor.
Had you heard about it before? Colonics?
Well, yeah, I'm on the periphery.
Okay.
I knew enough about it to sound like I was in the in crowd, you know, but you know, but I really didn't give it any real weight. You know, I didn't give it any credibility. And that's what gives the film a great deal of humor, because I go into this thing like really, you know, with a degree of resistance, but I committed to it, so I did it. And the 42 days introduced me to a new way of being. And the cornerstone of mental health is one's ability to look at the things within their life that is not working for them, and do something about it without looking at those things and beating themselves up.
Right.
And
that's very hard to do. And self-love is very hard to do. We would not treat other people the way we treat ourselves.
It is challenging. You know, one of the questions that we talked about this earlier is that one of the questions that people ask themselves is, what's wrong with me? Which is a self-defeating question. No good answer could come out of that. No, because the question itself is already a put down. You're already sinking into a negative spiral of inner dialogue.
Yeah, that's one thing to do, is asking yourself smart questions.
Right,
That's
exactly.
a way to...
Right. I mean, the function of therapy is to help you make better decisions. Really, ultimately, that's what it's supposed to do. And I'm really aspiring to this new way of looking at new therapeutic models, which go into positive therapy. You go into a therapeutic office with the intention of unburdening yourself of all these stories. Rather, this new approach is where you go in and they see what is working in your life and what are your strengths, and let's see if we can capitalize on those, which is a whole different way of thinking, you know.
So what most people ask me when they know I'm your friend now is, okay, first of all, he's still alive. How did he manage to keep the weight off? And is he sane? You know, because we all have these voices in our heads, which I call imposters, but these voices in our head that try to keep holding us back and take you right back to where you were. Most people who drop 100 pounds, they put it back on eventually. So what did you do with your mindset? Can you give me 3 things that you did that are tools that people could use? And I know it's a combination of things.
Yeah, it's you know, as you said, there's a spectrum of practices. One of the things was I was willing. I made a decision. One of the other things I did was really face some of the things I felt bad about. Some of my and all of them had to do with relationships, fractures in relationships that I was a part of. One of the things you'll notice when people talk about their sad story and their wounding, they rarely talk about how they wounded other people. And that's where the redemption is. And so I started looking at that with my brother, for example. I was very cruel to my brother when I was younger, and I revisited that with him and had a courageous conversation with him. Fortunately, he was willing to engage in that with me, and I redeemed that relationship. My relationship with my daughter, who was a casualty of divorce, and I was really committed to healing that relationship. And fortunately, after a while, she was willing to participate in that conversation. My ex-wife, and all these relationships were I started doing that work, and it's really confronting when you have to look at your side of the street, and because it's really seductive to just stay in that place of what was done to you and victim language. The problem with staying within victimization is you cannot grow. And so so that was one so it was making a decision, revisiting the wrongs that I had done, and then to keep carving new neural pathways, taking what they say in recovery world is contrary action. And Ralph Waldo Emerson said that you have to walk in a certain direction a number of times before you have a path. And so it is with the neural pathways in our brain. I have to keep repeating a practice until I have that different go-to place.
Okay, so many people repeat the practice of, I'm going to lose 10 pounds, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, or whatever it is. I'm going to be a success this year, New Year's resolutions. This year, I'm going to make sure this and this happens. So they did the same thing you did. What made yours last?
Well, they didn't.
What's the difference?
They didn't do the same thing. Resolutions, like, we're a very event-oriented group of people. I'm going to stop smoking on my birthday. I am going to, and what they do is they don't take the next step. And those things are you set yourself up to fail. And yet, in my view, when I talk to people or coach people, I create a situation where I set them up to succeed. And most people want to get their shit together by Friday, and that doesn't happen. And when you make a resolution, you have to have something to back that up. It's just not going to magically happen. And so that means you're going to have to take steps that are going to create a degree of discomfort. And like not smoking, right? Not smoking. Stop. If you're smoking, to cease smoking, you have to stop doing something. So it's actually not doing something. It's simple, but it's different, and in that respect, it becomes uncomfortable.
Okay, so if someone's watching this and they set an intention, I want to have a better relationship with my spouse or my parents or a sibling or a friend, how would you advise them to go about that?
I would say that the most important thing is look at your side of the street, because that's where the value is.
Yeah, there's so much value in forgiveness and forgiveness
Right.
of yourself. Absolutely.
Right. Well, okay. So you want to discuss forgiveness? In my experience, I found that some people do it the other way around, but until I began forgiving other people, I couldn't really forgive myself. And that was my opening. And some people say it's the other way around. Like there's a lot of things in the New Age world which I think are really so full of baloney. And they're pithy little sayings that circumvent the work. So for example, everything happens for a reason. Well, yeah, but some things happen for a really terrible reason. And so, you know, we're right where we're supposed to be. Well, I think if you were a Jew in Poland in 1939, it would be a tough sell. You know, we're all right where we're supposed to be. And so when I have to look at my side of the street all the time, and I may be only 20% responsible for the fracture in that relationship, but I'm 100% responsible for that 20%. And so we're veering off from the forgiveness thing, but I have found that is a key to freedom, you know, forgiveness.
Okay, so this is a silly question.
There's
Are you happy today?
You know,
Everyone
today,
says, is he happy today?
At this very moment, in this studio with you, you know, with your husband in the background, my friend David, and these people in the audience, I'm happy. But I may go into traffic and want to kill somebody, right? The two, you know, you have to learn how to navigate those two things. There was one day where I was feeling, you know, I was feeling like really into it, and I went to the Self-Realization Center here in LA, spent an hour and a half there, then went someplace else to another temple and meditated for an hour. 2 hours later, I'm in traffic, I'm cursing people on the road. Does that negate my practice? No. What happens is when I practice, when I do those practices, when I engage in meditation, when I try to do something nice for somebody and not get caught, what happens? I become less of an asshole for a shorter period of time.
Okay.
And that's a big deal in my world.
Yes, I think it's a big deal in most people's worlds. At least you admit it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no magic bullet. Bullets were designed to kill you, right? There's no magic bullet. Everybody's looking. They watch TV at 2 o'clock in the morning while they're eating Doritos and see an advertisement for an ab buster. You know, and they go buy the ab buster and they look at it for a while. Then it takes up room, and they look at it and they feel like a loser. You know, it's really a global practice. It's not just one thing.
So where can people see you? I know you've been on a speaking tour. You've been in Bali. You're going to Australia. You went to Kansas. You were speaking here. I mean, you're everywhere now. And you have a book, May I Be Frank?
We're all everywhere right now.
Yes, we are.
I got another piece of news for you. There's only one of us here. Ponder that for a moment. Okay.
Yeah, because we're all one soul.
Well,
really,
we're all swimming
bodies.
in an ocean of consciousness.
Yes.
You know, we're all swimming in that same ocean of consciousness. And if you notice, there's a big variety of fish in that ocean.
Yes, yes, there is. So where can we find you?
Well, like everywhere else, you know, Google and Facebook.
Yes.
It's required by. It's one of the reasons I don't commit crime anymore. Is because I'm so easy to find. I can't hide. You know, I go to Whole Foods and people look in my basket to make sure I'm still eating properly.
Yeah.
But I'm on. I can find me on Facebook. I have a book out called May I Be Frank. Same. I stretched that title as long as it'll work. And it chronicles the backstory of the film, but also some other aspects of my, my journey and my development. The film May I Be Frank is available on Gaiam or Food Matters TV, FM TV. And if you want to get in contact with me, it's pretty easy. I'm on Facebook.
Yes. Okay. And
Twitter and all those other things.
And you're doing workshops here in Los Angeles.
Doing workshops, as a matter of fact, you and I are composing one right now. We're putting one together.
Yes.
And two things, But yes, yeah, we're doing all of that.
Okay, so we could find you on Facebook, Twitter. You're speaking. You're doing workshops. And you're writing a movie of your life. Oh,
that's right.
Yes.
I just completed a screenplay that may be taken up. It's based on the book, and it's based on the film and some other aspects. It's sort of like a male working class version of Eat, Pray, Love, without the six-figure advance that Elizabeth Gilbert got. But yeah, everything. Really, we're at a point now with the work that you do. On a serious note, the work that you do, what I do, is in our own way try to raise consciousness, because we're at a choice point on our planet today. We're in trouble. We are in serious, serious trouble. We're at a crossroads, and it's really all about raising consciousness. And if we don't do that, we're going to suffer the consequences of the decisions that we've made. Addiction is only a reflection, the opioid crisis is only a reflection of what we're not looking at. We are asleep. And if we don't wake up and start taking action on our own behalf, the earth will be fine, but we won't.
I'm not even so sure about the earth at this
point.
Well,
the earth thinks in terms of geological time. 1 million years to the earth is no big deal. The earth will incorporate everything that we're doing to it and somehow make something beautiful out of it. And that's what we're called to do now. We're called to collaborate, and we're called, the true art of living is taking something that was bloody and painful and miserable and turn that into something beautiful. And what makes it beautiful is where it brings comfort and aid and wisdom to somebody else. And that's what we're called to do. That's what we're called to do. That is our job. You know, everything else, script writing and book selling and workshops, those are all the periphery. Deep down, underneath all those layers, what really matters is what can we do to help bring a greater consciousness and a greater awakening to the planet and one heart at a time.
Yes, and I think you cannot do it alone.
No.
One of the biggest questions I get is, how did you do this, or how did you accomplish that? And I have no friends. How do you get this? How do you get? It's like, you've got to create a community. If you don't have friends, start with loving yourself first and then reaching out. There's so many places on Facebook or online, meetup groups, where find out what you're interested in. Find a group, find a tribe where you could really grow and thrive and start making a difference in the world. Because as we know, the more you give, the more you get. You know,
what I have found is that the moment that two things that I think people overlook is the power of a commitment, and also how good it feels to be generous. I think, and that's really evident all around us. People have forgotten how really good it feels to be generous, how gratifying that is. It's really amazing when you start listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger as a philosophical spokesman. But he said there's no such thing as a self-made man, which I was listening to on YouTube, and it's true. There's no such thing as a self-made man. But I think right now what's happening, and what my interpretation is, this nudge by the universe to collaborate. Because if you know, there are the superstars like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Robert Kennedy, John Kennedy, but they got taken out. But they can't take all of us out. They can take a superstar out, and there's something to be said about somebody that is a leader, that is a leader. But we can all be leaders in our own way, in our own community, in our families, within our friendships, to be leaders without being abrasive and obnoxious. And by leadership, I mean, living in integrity. And it doesn't mean that you walk around being a saint, because all of us are flawed. I am a profoundly flawed human being. But through my experiences, I've learned to make better decisions in certain aspects of my life, and I've garnered a degree of wisdom that affords me an ability to make better decisions for myself and to share that wisdom with other people. Does it mean that I'm a guru? No, I don't want that responsibility, and I'm not qualified to be that. But I do have those qualities that now I feel compelled to share. To leave the place better than I found it.
And what are you doing towards that?
Well, I'm storytelling, sharing my experience, writing a book. I wrote a book. I try to do something nice for somebody every day and don't get caught. Is my advice. That will open your heart like nothing else. The very foundation of most serious spiritual practices is to help somebody and devote some energy to somebody that cannot reciprocate. And that is at the core of any serious spiritual principle. And the reason, in the Course in Miracles, it says we are generous out of self-interest. Because when you do practice that, your heart opens. And when your heart opens, something amazing happens. You get smarter.
Yeah, it's true.
You get smarter. And much more pleasant to be around.
Yes, and you like yourself more. And the more you like yourself, the more connections you make.
And here's the thing about liking yourself. You know what I like myself the most? When I'm not thinking about myself.
Yes.
That's when I like myself the most. When I'm concerned about you or concerned about somebody else, and not in the codependent way, like if I'm thinking about my daughter or my son and I'm not thinking about myself, I just, I'm a better person at that moment. And it's just a paradox, right? Your self-development becomes greater. You have a greater wisdom, inner wisdom, when you're tapping into that place where somebody else is more important. You know, you hear this from firefighters or first responders sometimes that risk their life, and you ask some of these guys, and they say, well, why did you were hanging on that branch on that cliff to get that guy, you could have died, why did you do it? And the response is, I felt that if I didn't do it, I would die. That's how connected we are. That is how connected we are. And you know, I want greater access to that place.
Yes, and I think you're getting there, and I think you're sharing it with so many people, because when I went to the Optimum Health Institute, that's a place where you do, you know, detox and cleansing, and you drove me there. Everyone's like, oh my God, there's Frank, because they just watched your documentary at this place, and they were just, you were just like Mick Jagger or something to them. It was crazy. I had no idea, you know, people were that still feeling that strongly about you, because the film came out like 10 years ago. Did it not?
Yeah, I mean, that's been another journey. People reacting to me like that. I mean, I was a carpenter in my other life, and next thing I know, baptism by fire, I'm in front of audiences. And in the beginning, I was kind of an ass about it, because I didn't know how to respond to all that adulation, because my self-esteem was, I mean, I had my emotional and spiritual development was not in step with my dramatic physical recovery. And so I didn't know how to respond to all this affection. And finally, you know, someone said to me, look, Frank, it's not about you. You know, just be yourself, because I was invested in the response of the audience. He says, just be yourself, you know, and I didn't know. I thought, the first thing that came to my mind is, what does that mean, and when was that ever enough? And so, you know, so that's been a journey. And what I had to come to the realization is that there's that story, you know, Palm Sunday, you know, like, I know I'm making a lot of biblical references, but I'm not religious, but they're good. They make a lot of sense. So Jesus is coming to Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, right? And they're celebrating him, and they're throwing palms, and there's a big cheer, and he's riding on the donkey. And I came to the realization that I'm the donkey, that I'm carrying a message. But the donkey sometimes think that they're throwing the palms at him, but they're not, you know. I get confused because I'm a man and I have an ego. But I've been privileged with carrying this message.
So let me ask you this. You have been arrested. You've served a little bit of time.
Google that, you'll notice that it's true.
You've been an alcoholic, you've been overweight, you've had all this stuff. You have a lot of shame. Shame is a big thing that holds people back.
Right.
They say, I could never possibly do that, or I can't ever apply for a job like that because I have shame, or this is all over the internet.
Right.
So what would you say to somebody who's suffering from that and can't move forward in their life?
It's very painful. But there are two aspects of that. You know, the difference between shame and guilt is that guilt is you feel remorse for something that you did. Shame is you feel that you're inherently bad, that there's something about you that renders you completely and utterly unlovable, and it's an unbearable feeling. And the root to ascending from shame is living in dignity. That is the absolute positive that will work, and it's a stretch. It takes time, but living in dignity is the antidote to shame. The other thing is that what I learned in my life, that when I chose to remain in that place, it was also a way of not taking responsibility. So if I said, you know, like people would say, you know, you should write, and you know, well, I can't write. Who am I to write? There's a million books in the library. But once I claim to be a writer, now I got to write something. Now I have to back up this declaration. And staying in shame and saying, well, you know, I'm not good enough, and you find people that participate in that contract, where a lot of my relationships were, okay, so I'm going to tell you how bad I feel about myself. You're going to say, oh, that was terrible that happened to you, and then I'm going to do that for you. And then we stay in that place. So we get a rut, and rather than getting out of the rut, we decorate it, we get cable, you know, get lawn furniture, order in pizza, instead of trying to escalate from that place. So, you know, my experience, that was my experience. That was kind of painful to look at that aspect of how I wasn't taking responsibility and the price that I was paying for that. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on this show. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Frank Ferrante. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.